I'm Jim Collison and live from Omaha, Nebraska, and the Gallup office is in Sydney, Australia, as well as Auckland, New Zealand. This is Gallup's Call to Coach, recorded on March 3rd, 2015. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions during the webcast, we do have a live chat room that's available for you. It's right below the main video window, just down there if you're at coaching.gallup.com/live. And if you're listening to the recorded version, both audio or video, or have questions about custom strength solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, you can call us. You can contact us, coaching@gallup.com, or use the contact page right there at coaching.gallup.com. And don't forget to visit the Gallup Strength Center, Gallup-Strengthscenter.com, all one word, Gallup-Strengthscenter.com, for all your coaching resources and training needs. You can get your codes out there as well. And you can also catch the video in both streaming and now downloadable audio. Best way to kind of listen to these programs is recapture that time you're in the car or on the train or in the plane. Download it to your phone, plug it in, and listen to it there. All that information is available, coaching.gallup.com. Claire DeCarteret is our host today. She works as a learning and sales manager with Gallup in the Sydney, Australia office. Claire, I'm not going to lie, I wish I was in Sydney, Australia. It's kind of cold here in Omaha, Nebraska, but welcome to another Call to Coach.
Thank you very much. Excited to be here, and I'm not going to rub it in, but it is a beautiful, sunny, and very warm day here in Sydney. So, yeah.
I bet it is.
Right.
Go ahead, Claire. Introduce our guest.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it is an absolute privilege to introduce our guest today, Donald Jessep. Donald is a Gallup-Certified Strengths Coach. He went through our Accelerated Strengths Coach program in October of 2014. Donald has an organization called donaldjessep.com, and I love Donald's vision for his organization and for the work that he does, which is to help people understand their magnificence and apply it every day in a sustainable way. So really excited to welcome Donald to the program. Thank you for joining us, Donald. I'd love for you to share with everybody your journey through strengths and starting with your top 5, if that's okay.
Sure, thanks, Claire. But just before we start, I can't resist it. Jim, in Auckland, we've had the most beautiful run of warm, still weather. And so,
you got to rub it in, right? You got to rub it in.
You're welcome to visit us. You're welcome to visit us anytime, Jim.
Thank you. I'll be there soon.
Hey, thanks, Claire. My strengths are connectedness, include a activator, maximizer, and the fifth one, just leave that one with me for a moment, and I know it. And how I've got into this work, I think for 15 years nearly, I started out business coaching, and then I moved into facilitation because I could see that it was all about the mindset of the leader in a business. And 3 or 4 years ago, I got serious about facilitation, and I got myself certified. So I'm also an internationally certified facilitator with the IAF, the International Association of Facilitators. I don't know how far you want to go back, Claire, but I can remember at a very young age watching my father working with the farm workers and concluding that he wasn't very engaging, and they didn't really like to give more than was absolutely necessary to keep their jobs. And of course, they didn't stay long. So, and that was way, way, way before I went to high school. I remember that. And now I look back and I see how that determined sort of my pathway to be interested in helping people work together. And in fact, have fun working together. In fact, work is fun. I got this little saying, actually, if I can digress from it. Little saying, this is easy, and I'm learning how to have it manifest for me.
Mm.
That's right, Claire.
Yeah, That's wonderful. I love that, Donald. And I love, you know, you've told me before that you work with people who want to engender greater cooperation, collaboration, consultation, workplace harmony, and decision making. And I know that you do both a lot of work at group level as well as individual coaching.
Yes, I see the principles as being very similar. In fact, exactly the same. You know, principles guide us irrespective of the situation. And so it's the same thing. We go through a very simple process of acknowledging the person, whether that be in a group or as an individual. And then we're asking questions so as people get to see what their situation is, in fact, what the deeper cause of their situation is. I'm taking people to a deeper truth. And then, once we've got people feeling like they've been heard and it's relevant to them, then we can start thinking about, well, what would we like? What's the vision? And then, of course, it's strategy. And then it might be, well, who's going to own the strategy? And owning it is different to doing it, which is a concept that I have to work quite hard to help people understand, especially in larger organizations when they're measured on doing. They're generally not measured on how influential they're being. And generally, if we do that really well, people become very clear on what they have to do. So it's the same with groups and with people, but it's different.
Yeah, absolutely, and very applicable. So, Donald, I know you've been working with Strengths for about 8 years now, prior to becoming a Gallup-Certified Strengths Coach. Tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing and the impact that you've observed Strengths, or a strengths-based approach, has on the work that you do with organizations and teams.
So I work with businesses. The best businesses are where I get the vision holder. Now, the vision holder is the person who owns the company, the person who's mortgaged their house to make this work. They're the vision holder. They've got a lot at stake. And so when I work with them, it's a combination of socializing their vision and helping people see how, with their magnificence, they can contribute because the vision is inspiring. In other words, it's communicated in terms of benefits to the individual. So the benefit of this is that for those that really I can get to really engage, and you know, I work at quite a high level. So sometimes I'm very challenging for people, in which case I have to be careful that I'm not too challenging for people, because you know, I'm choosing to work with the people who want to shift their mindset beyond survival to actually thriving. And so what happens is people get out of the detail the work, which saps our energy, and they start to work at a much more conceptual level, and they gain energy in their work. They get excited in their work, and that is contagious. And they find that everybody around them does a little bit more work, but because it's inspiring, it doesn't seem like work. And the actual work gets done. It's almost by magic.
Yeah, I love that, and it goes really back to our, you know, our 5 clues of talent, and flow being one of them, because it sounds like what you're talking about is that state of flow. When you're operating to strength, you're working in a flow, and it almost doesn't feel like you're working because you're just really enjoying what you're doing and being super productive at the same time. So I love that, Donald. Donald, what kind of techniques and tips do you have, or do you use, that have helped you translate that vision that you're talking about into action? How do you bring it all to life through a strengths lens?
Mainly what I use is I have very simple frameworks. I have a little principle that if I can't write it with a felt tip pen, I'm writing too much. So I like to help people, and they come out different every time depending on who I'm working with. We create a little framework. Like an agenda to me in a meeting sits way, way, way down the framework, but it's what people often start with. So the framework, for example, for a meeting is connecting as people, being together. So just connecting would be the first chunk of that meeting framework. And then the next chunk of that would be, what is the situation? And then we might say, well, what are the issues in the situation? And then we start getting into agenda issues, you see. Mm-hmm. So I work with very simple frameworks. And you mentioned my book, you mentioned that I'm interested, Claire, in achieving more with doing less. A few years ago, I wrote this little book, and it's called Achieving More, Doing Less. And some of these are the frameworks that I use. They're just very simple frameworks. But then in amongst that, I use a lot of story. And I'm stories that I'm trying to get that are relevant to people, so as they put themselves into as the subject in the story. Mm-hmm. And then they make it relevant, and as a coach I don't really know how they're interpreting it, but that will manifest in time. So I use a lot of story, and it's a matter of, sometimes I use story to lay the foundation for a question. Sometimes I use a story for transaction time, so they might have discovered something and then we just need a little bit of time just so they can think about it. So it's about taking the pressure off with a good story or a soft story. And I think sometimes I use a story to float an idea. In fact, I use allegories. Allegories are a story whereby you have people and situations and occurrences and places that we can relate to that communicate a principle. And so I use allegory, which is just a form of story. And the reason why I use those is because I'm always looking for a mandate. By mandate, I mean that emotionally and spiritually, people are saying, Donald, I'm with you. So we're not talking intellectual, as a trainer might work with. I'm talking a much higher level of sort of connection. And when we present an allegory, it's esoteric. In other words, it has to be studied to be understood. So when I use an allegory, I can tell whether they get it or not, which tells me how sort of connected they are, how deeply they're connected. And it's interesting because just when you write a book, you know, you could write a book and you send it to the printer and because I haven't got a reputation, I've got to self-publish. And so you have to order 1,000 or 2,000 books, and of course if it doesn't fly, you've spent a lot of money and time. So last night I had my little book, which is my latest little book, and it's called Samuel at the Fair, and it's an allegory. And then it explains what an allegory is. So that came off the press in its prototype form last night, Claire. So those are a couple of techniques I use.
Congratulations on that. Donald, I can definitely hear your connectedness coming through in the way that you're using language to paint a picture of what you do and also the work that you do in general. I'm really interested to hear how you weave strengths into the stories and how then that becomes applicable to performance. And maybe you could give us an example. I know you've recently written a case study. You might want to share an example there.
Yeah, I'm not too sure that it's interesting because since I did my certification, it took me a little bit of time because, you know, you do the certification, it's an accelerated course, and so you get all engrossed in the material of the week, you know, fantastically facilitated by yourself and Robin and Mark, Claire. And then you step back from that, you come back to the real world and you say, how do I apply this? And this has to be personalized. So the stories and the allegories don't really embody strengths in the framework of the Gallup-Certified, because they're there to help me understand the client and help the client connect. And I'm looking for, it's once we have that mandate and we have the connection with people, then we do a framework, and the StrengthsFinder becomes part of the framework. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking for a framework that the client can take away at the end of a session, and that will be strengths-based. And let me give an example. I have a lovely lady, and I have written this up in a case study. It's been anonymized. In fact, I've changed gender, so if I slip, please forgive me. But it's about this lady who there was a tension between her and her manager. And I observed this for 3 or 4 months. So I would work with them in the whole group, and then I worked with the senior managers, of which there was 4 of them and myself. And I observed Sue working with her manager, and there was always this tension. And what I saw is Sue was really earnest. She really believes in it. She really wants to progress the cause of the organization. But she does it with her arranger, of which comes through really strongly. And invariably it takes her down to detail too soon. And other people in the meeting get a bit frustrated because it seems like she's slowing up the flow. And her other strengths are connected, empathy, and includer, to name 3 of them. And they are by far, like an arranger is her 5th of the top 5. And so I've been helping her see that actually if she used her arranger outside the meeting in preparation, and particularly in the morning, I do a lot of work with another framework actually is the day routine. You know, we all have a routine around our day, and if we get deliberate about it and if we have a purpose for different parts of our day, not tick-tock time-wise, but what we give attention to. And so if I can get her to apply her arranger in visualizing the day down to the detail and putting it all into order, and then putting in place processes, so when she goes to a meeting, she has all that sorted, she can just be with people, because she's a lovely sort of soft and connected person. So that would be a way that I've used those strengths that in the wrong place they can get in the way.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about that, the balconies and the basements or potential vulnerabilities of the talent themes. So you know, it's so interesting that kind of takes over for her, that arranger theme takes over and has that effect on others, because she does have that people window as well with her empathy, connectedness, includer. So sometimes it's just bringing that awareness back to it, which it sounds like you really did. What are some other... Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
We've got lots of work to do, because, you know, there's no sustainable change without a change of beliefs. And, you know, I believe that most of the vast majority of our response to a situation, which is what gives us our authenticity, or what points to our authenticity, it's spontaneous, out of our subconscious. So if we don't affect a change in beliefs, it's either going to be hard work, and it has to be willful. So it takes time. This takes time. So it's a matter of, first of all, connecting, understanding the situation, and then creating a framework, and then it's setting up prompts so as people are reminded to contemplate.
Yeah. Yeah, very nice. And it links back to your goals for the work that you do, which is about creating sustainable change and helping people find that magnificence, apply it every day in a way that has longevity and does change behavior and beliefs. So, yeah, I love that. So, Donald, what really is your sweet spot in terms of the work that you're doing with teams and organisations now, and what do you see for donaldjessep.com in the next 12 months?
My sweet spot is when I'm working in a close partnership with somebody that takes care of my areas I'm not strong. Like, although arranger is number 6 for me, I understand. I work best when I love working with engineers, because, you know, they put everything in nice order, you see. So we can partner, and they can make sure the details taken care of and all the logistics, etc. And I can just be with people. So that is my soft spot. So in the future, I see, to me, it's the more influential people I work with, the better, because there's a tremendous ripple effect, because people become very visible when they're working in their strengths and feeling magnificent. Like in the average workplace, they stand out like a beacon. And so in the next 12 months, I'm looking to work with a larger domain, so as the influence of that can be greater. I'm like, it's not just Gallup has this thing about everybody living their magnificence and living in their strengths and applying them. That's my vision too, Claire.
Yeah, I know it's yours as well, and I think that's the commonality, that shared vision, and it is, we're creating waves and a movement, and there's a real tipping point of people wanting to get on board and see this impact, because like you said, there's definitely a visibility. People become really visible when they're working and operating in that area. Donald, you've worked with strengths, or have taken a strengths-based approach in the work that you do for about 8 years, I think you said. Tell me about where you've really seen it have an impact, and how that plays out.
Well, just another area that I work, which I haven't talked about, Claire, and that is I work with youth.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm privileged because my wife works with the Auckland City Council and with a program that is about bringing youth together from all over Auckland and developing and growing leaders for sustainability. So now this is a voluntary activity, so we get the very best leaders from, and they're aged between sometimes as young as 14, and Kate runs this program. So for 7 years now, I have gotten to work with the leaders of this program. So it's not just the best across Auckland, but I actually work with the leaders, and they've come back a second time, and they've demonstrated a maturity and a commitment to the sustainability cause. And we're now, the last couple of years, we've done StrengthsFinder with them. And when we have young people understand their strengths, now I understand that, maybe it's going to evolve a wee bit from a young person, but it is so helpful to them, because these students, they're working with their peers, but it sets them up so well, because their real challenge comes when they leave the structured environment of school and university and they go into the workplace, and there's all these extra pressures. So for them to be clear on their magnificence and had a few years to practice being influential with it, it's huge stability. And we've had now with this program 7 years, we've got some that have gone right through university, and now they're leading organisations around the world. And in fact, now we've set up this organisation called MAD Alumni, MAD-L, and we've run we call it a hui. A hui is a retreat, and we've run that for 2 years now, and it's just so exciting to see that these young people are influential, and they really do challenge adults to step up a great deal more, and to think that they've got so much more of their life to make a difference. That's really exciting, Claire.
That's wonderful work. So everybody takes this StrengthsFinder assessment, and then what do they do with it as part of this MAD-L program?
Well, you hear it come into their conversations. It gives them a framework for communicating magnificence as well as understanding themselves. It gives them a framework for helping organise people, so as people can play with them in their team. So it's a framework for conversation, but it's also a framework for contemplation. It's contemplation that changes beliefs. And so it's quite subtle. Like, it's not something that people speak about as quite sort of deliberately. You just hear it popping up. I once worked with a client, and he was a CEO, and he had me working with a line manager. And he was interviewed on a little video clip, and the interviewer said, "Well, how do you know it's working?" And he says, "I listen carefully to the words people are using around Donald." They, who was it? Kipling said, "The words are the most powerful drug known to mankind." They give us away. Our words give us away. So they are my stock and trade to understand what's going on. I'm listening between the lines.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that language component, because one of the beauty the beautiful things about the StrengthsFinder is it doesn't discriminate, and it really does bring a lot of diversity. So you can apply it to work with youths, you can apply it to work in a business context, which you do both of those things, but it provides that common language. So when you're switching gears between the work that you're doing with Mad Al and the youths, and then you're switching gears to provide facilitation and consultancy in organisations with a really hard business edge, how does that play out for you? How do you manage your own strengths around straddling those two different focuses?
It's all about intention. So being really clear on my intentions before I go into a situation, because it's my intention that sets me up as to how I be. You see, and so it's because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get people to see a bigger picture all the time. So I'm trying to get them to transcend their thing. I'm transcending gender, I'm transcending age, ethnic backgrounds, religion, whether it be business or public servants or community groups. My intention is to represent principles that are bigger than all of that. And when I can get people curious about that and some very simple understandings there, then we come down and we can make it relevant to where they're at. So I've got this little saying in my mind, you know, it's first macro and then micro. Whereas the people I'm helping generally, because the micro, the detail, the stuff, what's going wrong, it causes us pain. It's in our face every day. It's very hard for people to get out of that. Whereas I'm an outsider and I've got my processes that are now enable me to just lift people out of that. And it doesn't matter what their background, it doesn't matter what industry. I've worked with daycare centres and nurses, and I've worked with heavy machinery foundries and machinery people, and you know, from the softest to the most blokey masculine people and men, and the converse and women. You know, it's across all of those things.
Nice. And Donald, so for all the other coaches that are listening today or going to be visiting this, what's one of your top tips for coaches and something that you've learned over the years in your coaching?
Yeah, there's plenty of time. You know, if you play a long game, there's always a quickening. But if you don't play a long enough game, there's just frustration, and it doesn't go. People just go away. And I used to do a lot of sales training, and actually recently I've had a young Jack. He rang me up at the end of last year and said, Donald, I want to learn about facilitation, and I nearly fell off my tree because he was 21, and I thought he'd be looking for someone more current than that, and so I said, Jack, if you want to learn facilitation, it starts with sales. So here's a list of businesses that I want to ring you, and I want you to talk about StrengthsFinder. And so just the other day, we had some conversation about sales. We did some sales training.
Nice.
And, you know, sales process is a fascinating thing about this. It takes time. Because if you have this inherent intention in a sales meeting to make a sale, you're trying to jump a whole heap of little psychological processes and processes and steps. So you're trying to hurry it up. Now, many people do this inadvertently. They see sales as an event. It's I meet you, you give me your money, and I deliver some product. But when we see sales as a long process of little steps, and the intention of the salesperson at each step is just to get people to the next step, that's all. And when we do that thoroughly, because we understand the steps in a sales process, clients will say to us, hurry up. They'll say something like, where do I buy? How can I try it? They give us encouragement. But if we don't play a long enough game, we invariably find, well, customers, what do they say? They'll say, I'll think about it, or if you got something I can read, or call me later, or I'll call you back. That's what they say. I'll give you a read. and there's no buy in there. So I think that's the thing. And you know, I used to be young too, and I used to. I look back, I was probably quite arrogant and impatient, but I remember if it wasn't going to happen the next 10 minutes, was it worth doing it? I couldn't be sure, so I didn't.
Just about the quick win, hey? Yeah.
Yeah. Good things take time.
I like that. So play a long game would be one of your tips.
Yeah.
And so when Jack is making these initial sales calls to talk about the StrengthsFinder, what are you both finding that's really resonating with people? What is getting them to that next step?
What's important is the credibility to me. It's the Gallup name. And we just wouldn't, because for many years I tried doing it without a significant brand behind me. But when Jack says, look, he's here and I want to talk about the StrengthsFinder, people are all of a sudden there's credibility there. So that's just so useful to a small practitioner like me is the Gallup brand. And then they want to know what it's all about, and that's when we start talking about the difference between a StrengthsFinder focus and what is more traditional. And as soon as we've delivered those two little points, which take about 30 seconds, we're then asking them a question to establish where they're at with their culture. And a question might be around what do you do to help your people? And you can calibrate the sort of stretch in this by the word you might use. When we say, what are you doing to help people be magnificent, that's a big stretch for a lot of people. But to be more productive might be a very sort of nuts and bolts type way of not so much stretch. So,
and relevant.
And an intuitive call as to which challenge we present. So we want to get them talking. So first of all, we have to get their attention, and then we want to segue into a question that allows them to speak. And after that, well, this is sales. I think it's sales 101, Claire. Who knows what will happen next?
Very nice. So I think there's some really good tips for people listening as well. And yeah, I'm sure there are many coaches that can identify with that. So before we kind of hand over to Jim, what are some tips that people can take away for doing more with less stress from your book?
Well, actually, I just opened this one up here. This is one I call ARPQ. And
do you want to read that out to us?
I do. So the A stands for acknowledgement, and it's a process of responding to people. The R stands for respond, but actually there's a double meaning to the R in this framework. It also means reason, and I'll give you an example in a minute. And then the next one is permission. The P is for permission, because as we're listening to see whether we have permission to, then the third one is Q is question, ask a good question. And it's particularly useful where you have a stressful situation, and I'll tell you a little story to explain it. I had a client many years ago, and his job was to coordinate tradespeople to fix houses after an insurance claim. So you had a lot of stakeholders that had quite diverse interests. We had the insurance company that wanted to minimize cost. We had tradespeople who basically wanted to get the job done efficiently and quickly, and we had the homeowner who wanted a perfect result, even though the house wasn't perfect before. And there was a problem with this lady, and the shower was leaking, and it was leaking after they tried to fix it, and it had gone on for some months. Eventually, Lance, the boss, was invited to he was summoned to this lady's house, and he went along, and he took maybe half an hour. I was working with him at the time, and I remember just working as a case study with him. And he took maybe half an hour acknowledging this lady. In other words, he just nodded and said, tell me about that. He just listened, and she was like a steam train, just really getting excited. And then he was listening until she actually was sort of running out of steam a little bit. And then he said, something along the effect of, hey, well, I'm here now, Mrs. whatever her name was, and I'm going to take personal ownership of this. And then he said, and this was the question he asked, what would you like us to do about it? And then she was able to say, this is what I'd like you to do about it, and he took notes, etc. So when we use this process, we're with people rather than taking an adversarial approach. So stress only happens when we have resistance, either in an adversarial situation or we're not aware of something and there's resistance there. And this is a fabulous story because of what happened next. So Lance, this is all perfectly sorted out, and he had really clear things that she would agree to was going to happen, and it all looked really black and white, and he got up and he said, not a problem, Mrs. Jones. And as soon as he said that, she got fired up again, and she said, Mr. What's his name? I forget his name, his surname. He said, it may not be a problem to me, but it's causing me a lot of grief. And so he actually broke the rule right at the end, and he was right back at the beginning. So he had to go through the process again.
Okay.
Because by saying not a problem, he didn't acknowledge her.
Right. Okay. So it's acknowledge, respond, permission, and what was the final step?
Question.
Question.
It's all about good questions. It's all about relevant questions that are calibrated to present the right amount of challenge.
Very nice. Yeah, I think that can apply to a coaching conversation as well. Definitely with the questions. It's all about the good questions, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
It's the good questions in the right space.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by we do a lot of work, the stories, the allegories, and the frameworks to help people be in a right space, the right understanding, so as we can pop a question that invites them to move towards a brighter future.
Yeah, create that opening. Yeah. Jim, speaking of questions, I know you had a question as well that you wanted to ask Donald.
Yeah, this is one of the questions I asked because I get the privilege of doing these webcasts all around the world, and in India and there in Australia, as well as in Singapore and here in the United States. I like to ask this cultural question, and particularly in New Zealand, what are the struggles that you have there when we talk about coaching, particularly with strengths coaching? A struggle, a barrier to that there? Is there a particular anything in the culture that you think of that, man, if you could just get to the bottom of it, it would sure make things go a lot better for you?
I sure do, Jim. In fact, I was just talking about this on Sunday. You know, we're a land of small business. And in fact, I heard some figures a few years back that we've got the greatest number per head of population of businesses by choice. So these are people who leave their corporate job and choose to go into business. And I think Gerber has a saying for it. Actually, it's a disease. But anyway, so there's a lot of small businesses, and if you overhear the conversation between two people who know each other and they both own businesses, you know, you might go to a plumbing conference and you listen to them, and invariably after sort of hello, how are you? You know, one will say to the other, are you busy? And the other one, he wants to demonstrate he's busy somehow, because in New Zealand we believe busy is virtuous. And it has us working. I think we've got the longest work hours of anywhere in the world, and yet we're in the most abundant country in the world. It's not the right way round. And so we've got to help people realize that those beliefs about what is virtuous in their work are actually not particularly serving them particularly well. I think they may have served them a few generations ago because we were very recently a colonial country, and if you weren't busy, if you weren't working hard doing the physical stuff, you went hungry. But things have moved on. You know, we're a bountiful country now. We've got fabulous opportunities and resources and infrastructure, and we've got calmness and racially and politically, and it's a magnificent country. And if I could help New Zealand business owners just understand how magnificent and their opportunities on the world scene, that would please me a great deal.
That's good insight, and you have Middle Earth, so you can't you can't go wrong with that. Ryan asked in the chat room, how do we get your book? So if someone wanted to get a copy of your book, he's obviously interested. What's the best way to be able to get your book?
It's a good point. I've been terrible at marketing my own material, so I have some of these available, and the best idea would be to email me or contact me through my website, which is donaldjessep.com. And I'd be delighted to arrange that with anybody that was interested.
Okay, sounds good. Maybe we'll sell a couple of those for you, and some people will pick those up. It's always fun, and it's always great to support local coaches as well who are doing this. So Donald, thanks for doing that, and we appreciate it. Claire, as we bring this in for a landing, I know we've got some courses coming up there in your area. Anything when we talk about our training availability for coaches, what do you want to highlight as far as courses go?
So right now in Australia and New Zealand, we're running one accelerated strengths coach course every quarter. So we've just finished up in February, the week of the 16th of February, with another cohort. That'll be our 5th cohort across Australia and New Zealand of Gallup-Certified Strengths Coaches. Our next program to become a certified Gallup Strengths Coach in Australia is on the week of the 1st to the 5th of June. So that will be in Sydney, and the following one will be in September in Auckland. So would love more coaches to join our Gallup family and come along to that program where we cover off really 3 key components of strengths coaching: coaching for individual performance, coaching managers, and of course coaching teams. And all of that is wrapped up in how you can understand your own strengths and talents and apply them to your coaching role to be the best and most effective coach. So those programs are coming up.
And because we're a global webcast, you could maybe be wondering where else in the world are they available. And it's just as I'm looking at the list, I see Atlanta, Omaha, Santa Clara, Washington, D.C., Delhi, Beijing, Mexico City. We may be really close to a city near you if you're listening to this. And so the best way to do that, and you might also be listening to this 6 months from now, and so the best way to do that is to go out to the Gallup Strengths Center. Just GallupStrengthsCenter.com, scroll a little bit down, it'll say courses, and just click on that, and all the most up-to-date courses are there. In fact, all the most up-to-date strengths material is there. So if you're wondering what this StrengthsFinder is, you just stumbled upon this, and you're like, get me some more StrengthsFinder, head out to the Gallup Strengths Center, and there's lots of information. We're here to help you. We've got lots of resources available. About 100 of these videos now. Hard to believe we've done that many, but about 100 of these videos available for you. They're all for free. We'd love to have you take a look. If you've got questions around any of this, email us, coaching@gallup.com, and of course, you can catch the recorded audio and video of this program. I mentioned this before. We've got a whole plethora of them, including a thriving Facebook group, all kinds of things on YouTube, and all kinds of different ways to connect. If you can't figure out a way to connect, you contact me personally, and I will get you connected to our webcast. But everything's available, coaching@gallup.com. We have a brand new meetup page out there as well. We believe as we get bigger, we need to get smaller, and so we're trying to start meetups. In fact, Claire, we don't have a good meetup going on in Sydney yet. We're going to have to get that going in Sydney, Australia.
We have plans. Yes, it will be going this year.
Good. And we want to put that on the meetup page. You don't have to be even a coach to get a meetup started. It's just StrengthsFinder enthusiasts getting together, talking about strengths. We love our coaches to get involved in that. My goal is 100 meetups around the world by the end of the year. We're about at 20. So I got some work to do, and if you want to help us, let us know, get in touch with us, and we'd love to have you get to be a part of that. We also want to let you know that we have all kinds of tools available for both iPhone and Android. We have brand new apps available for you. If you're having trouble remembering your top 5, maybe you took it a while ago, can't remember what it is, it's okay. It happens. But we can fix that. We can fix it. So download the app, iPhone or Android. It's free. Log in with the email address that you took the StrengthsFinder with, and boom, it'll be right there on your phone. Recommendation is take a screenshot of it at that point and then make it your lock screen. The average person checks their phone 62 times a day. Now, Donald, you talked about how busy people are in New Zealand. Everybody's busy checking their phone. Imagine looking at your top 5 62 times, right? I bet in a couple days you'd have those memorized. And so that's our free tip to you. And we make those available for you free of charge as well out at either one of those stores. We want to thank you for coming out, for joining us today, and we'll say if you enjoyed this program, please share it. Just send the link on to to someone, and we'd love to have you do that. And we look forward to the next Call to Coach. Thanks for coming out, everybody.
A huge thank you to you, Donald, for appearing today and sharing your passion with all of us about the work that you're doing with organizations, with individuals, with teams, and with youth. I love hearing your strengths come to life in the stories that you're telling, and just really, really honored to have you here with us today. So a huge thank you, Donald.
Hey, it's a pleasure, Claire. Thank you very much. And anytime, and I just urge, keep up the good work, you and Jim, and anybody else who's starting on the StrengthsFinder journey. All power to you. There's good work to be done, and I wish you well. Thank you.
And with that, we'll say goodbye, everyone.